Exploring Joliet is produced by students at the University of St. Francis. This show helps to better inform you of our city, people, plans, and activities.
Good evening, everybody. I see some alumni in the room, so welcome home to our alumni. I am Dr. Terry Cottrell. I'm Vice President for Operations, Planning, and Technology here at USF. And as an institution of higher education and a welcoming community of learners, we pride ourselves on hosting events like what we have in store for tonight. As one of the larger employers in the area, we have thousands of students who come here each and every day, thousands of alumni who come back for events like tonight, and we expect more as we were just named the top Illinois private institution for online graduate business, education, and MBA programs. We're growing, and we are happy. Thank you. We're happy to be part of this community and part of the draw to people to Joliet and Will County each day. Tonight's town hall event, Residents United for Safer Highways, or RUSH, brings together members of various Illinois transportation organizations and local elected officials to discuss immediate and long-term options available to make Will County highways safer. This is an important and essential topic for all of us today. Thank you again for joining us in this discussion, and please welcome our moderator for this evening, Mr. Scott Slocum from WJOL.
Thanks, Terry. Well, good evening, and thank you for being a part of the first of what we hope turn out to be a handful of community town hall meetings presented by RUSH, Residents United for Safer Highways. Thanks to Terry and the University of St. Francis for having us here tonight. USF, a great campus. We host a really good high school basketball tournament here. Yes, we are multifaceted and multi-talented. Every Thanksgiving that draws about 7,000 or 8,000 people over 4 days. So we love this campus. Also want to thank Katie Smith from the University of St. Francis. We could not have done this without her. Where's Katie's here somewhere? Can we please give her a round of applause? She spent numerous hours. And also Jim Murphy from Murphy & Associates, JV Murphy & Associates, has been huge. Even when he was in Cancun, he was helping us out. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. Thanks, Murphy. And his wife, Vicki, for putting up with him while he was on his phone when he was in Cancun. In case you don't know, my name is Scott Slocum from WJOL Radio. I'm on each weekday morning from 5:30 to 9. I've been doing mornings for 18 years. Ironically, that's about as far back as Mary's report goes. So when you hear the number of fatalities that has popped up on this screen, and she talks about here in a little bit, I can safely say that I've talked about each and every one of them. And as you will hear, there are many, many, and way too many. Each morning and afternoon, we do 4 traffic reports in an hour. And I-80 is a daily issue. Traffic jams, fender benders, major crashes, horrific fatal crashes. Just recently, I covered a truck crash on 80 near 55 and had to watch from short distance firefighters lay a tarp over the cab of a burnt out truck. And that made me think about a phone call that a loved one was just about ready to get. I'd finally had enough just a couple of months ago when a FedEx truck driver, a 51-year-old mom, came to the aid of a broken down coworker on I-80 near Hobart Road and was killed. It made me sick thinking about the principal at Manuka Junior High School having to go pull her child out of class to deliver the news. I couldn't stop thinking about that all day. My son had to go to high school early that day in New Lenox, comes from Shanahan, and was just a few cars west of the accident. I kept thinking, would What if he would have left home 15 seconds earlier? He could have been involved in that crash. So my family got lucky. But that's not the case for a few dozen other families. It's time to rebuild 50-plus year infrastructure that has barely been touched. It's time to take short-term measures as well. And that's how Rush got started. So we're going off on the morning. Listeners started calling up, what can they do to help? Well, we started Rush. I made phone calls to several elected officials here in this room and businessmen as well. And they said, yes, we'll do whatever we do. I said, let's just put your name on it right now. But it was Mike Watson, who owns a small business here in Joliet, that created the logo, and he's here tonight. Thank you very much, Mike and his wife, Lynn. They created the logo, and off we were. We put a petition on change.org. We got 7,000 signatures in a matter of just a couple of days. This was purely grassroots, with the help of a radio station, of course. Well, if you came here tonight to lay blame on others for the dangers on our local highways, then you're going to leave disappointed, because that's not our goal. If you're here to listen to extremely knowledgeable people who have extensive experience in the transportation business, people who are going to offer some short and long-term solutions, we hope, to reduce the dangerous situation that we all face every single day, and how to pay for these solutions, then you'll be glad you came, because we're going to offer some solutions by the end of the night that hopefully we will take to Springfield or Washington and make a difference. If time allows, we'll take public comments and suggestions at the conclusion of our program. So welcome everyone, and let's introduce our first speaker. Mary Craighead is the Transportation Policy Analyst at the Illinois Economic Policy Institute. Prior to joining ALEPI, she served as the coordinator for Victoria, Texas's Metropolitan Planning Agency and Senior Transportation Planner for the city of Victoria, Texas. She earned a Master's of Urban Planning and Graduate Certificate in Transportation Planning from Texas A&M, and a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and Economics from the University of Evansville. Her research interests include transportation planning and policy, community development, energy policy, infrastructure investment, and environmental policy. She's not an outsider. She was born and raised in Northwest Indiana, so she has driven 80, 65, 294 ever since she was a small child. Ladies and gentlemen, with a report she's ready to unveil here tonight, let's give a warm welcome to Mary Craighead. Mary?
Thank you, Scott. As you said, I'm the Transportation Policy Analyst with the Illinois Economic Policy Institute. We are a nonprofit research organization. We provide analyses on policies and projects impacting the economies of the Chicago area, Illinois, and the Midwest overall. Really, an efficient transportation network is a key component of a thriving economy, and that makes it one of our prime research areas that we focus on at ALEPI, and that's what brings me here tonight. So I'm going to give you a overview of a report that we're going to be releasing tomorrow morning that you'll be able to find at the website illinoisepi.org. So I'm going to go over just a brief overview of the report, analyzing the general design, existing traffic, safety concerns, and looking towards the future with future growth. So gonna dive in here. So to give you an idea of the scope of what we're looking at here, it's I-80 between Ridge Road and US 30, a total of 16 miles. So this is a project that's consistent with one that has been identified in a long-range transportation plan completed by the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. So we thought it was important to stay consistent with what has already been identified in the long run of a potential long-term project. So my first step here is really taking a look at how the road is currently functioning in terms of design, existing traffic, and just general existing conditions of the roadway. So we're going to start with the design. As most of you are aware, this 16-mile stretch of I-80 is largely 2 lanes in each direction, although I happen to be showing, oh, sorry, I didn't move here. Happen to be showing a picture of, the one portion that's 3 lanes. But just ignore that for a moment. So as was previously shown in the map, if I can go back, there we go. It's several bends and curves and making it a slightly curvier part of the interstate roadway system. So, like I said, largely 2 lanes, but a few portions that have 3, and as you can see from this picture, there are several bridges here that have basically no shoulders, making it a very narrow roadway to travel on. So right here is a Google Street View image. You can see it's just east of Route 53 crossing over railroad tracks there. Moving on to speed limits. As a result of the existing design of the roadway, speed limits of this particular stretch are lower than surrounding portions of I-80. You can see that it's right as you get into Joliet, the speed limit does go down to 55 miles an hour, which is that yellow road. Yellow portion of the road, sorry, excuse me. There is a small portion also, it's really hard to see from this map, but there's a small portion that's only 45 miles an hour, and that's around one particular bend. That's really low speed for an interstate highway. A larger view of this map would show you that on either side, there is it remains at 65 miles an hour, so it's just this one direct portion that drops down to a lower speed due to the design. Moving on to traffic volumes here, just to give you a general idea of how traffic is flowing through the region. You can see that Joliet doesn't have the highest, or the stretch through Joliet doesn't have the highest amount of traffic. As you get east of 355, traffic reaches above 120,000, whereas around Joliet it's really hovering around 70,000 cars or vehicles a day. And west of 55, it's even lower, less than 60,000. But more significantly, looking at truck volumes, you can over 20% of total traffic volumes are comprised of trucks. So this was calculated based on IDOT's bridge information system, which offers a percentage of truck traffic over each bridge. Each of those triangles is a bridge, and it gives you, like I said, the bridge information system gives you a overall value of how much traffic is traveling over those bridges, and then also the percentage of that traffic that are trucks. So yeah, you can see the darker the color, the higher percentage that truck traffic is. So east of I-55, you can see the amounts are largely 20% or higher, and if you get west of I-55, they reach even above 24% on average. So in comparison, if you look at I-55 near Romeoville, the percentage of truck traffic is averaging around 11 to 12%, whereas around 355, just north of I-80, it averages around 10 to 13%. So you can see kind of the drastic difference and how much truck traffic there truly is on this stretch of I-80. Okay, so in an effort of time, I'm skipping that slide. So now we're going to move on to the specifics of bridge conditions. Taking a closer look at these bridges, looking at specifically maintenance. So there are 39 bridge structures that are identified in IDOT's bridge information system. And some of the bridges there's so many to give you an idea is because some are only carrying, eastbound traffic, and then there's also a westbound bridge. So we took a look at all of those. And 26% of those 39 bridges were considered structurally deficient. IDOT defines that as there are significant load-carrying elements that are in poor condition. This doesn't indicate that the bridge is unsafe, it just requires significant maintenance and repair to remain open, will eventually require rehabilitation and or replacement. So 46% of the bridges are considered functionally obsolete. This is really incorrectly designed for current traffic. So when they were built, they were designed according to the standards that were common at that time, but because of changing traffic conditions, they're no longer appropriate. One example of that are shoulder widths, where when some of the bridges were built, the shoulders wouldn't have had to have been required to be so wide, but now with increased traffic, the design requirements would have required larger shoulders. So basically, just giving you an overall indication, the change of traffic conditions, those bridges are no longer adequate to handle that. Also, one of the other standards that they use is a bridge sufficiency rating. So this is taking into account structural characteristics, how essential the bridge is for public use, any limiting features. And so each of these triangles, like I said, represents a bridge, and the different colors represent what the rating is. The red is the lowest, meaning the sufficiency rating goes between 0 to 100, with 100 being the best. There are 5 bridges that are red on that map, and that indicates that they are below a rating of 50. So there's also 10 between the 50 and 70 range, and 11 that do remain higher than 80, so in a pretty good rating. So this just gives you kind of an overall idea of the existing condition of the roadway, really the maintenance that would be required from it. So I'm now going to move on to safety concerns. So in addition to the structural and existing traffic conditions, it's also really crucial to understand that a roadway is functioning safely. So as most of you can attest, the stretch of I-80 has been home to several devastating crashes, as Scott just mentioned. So I'm going to start with fatal crashes. We went all the way back to 2001, and looking between 2001 and 2016, there were 37 fatal crashes. So the different colored dots indicate the different year spans here. You can see generally where they're located. A lot of them are located along kind of particularly curvy stretches of road. So moving forward, to give us an idea of more of what current conditions are, looking just between 2010 and 2016, there were 12 fatal crashes. It is obviously quite a bit lower than what the early years of 2000 were, but obviously we don't want any fatal crashes on this roadway, and it's still heartbreaking to see that number be that high for those 7 years. So in order to give you a general idea of how this compares to other areas, we compared it to I-80 just east in surrounding Tinley Park between Wolf Road and Ridgeland Avenue, and then also we looked at I-57 slightly south between 183rd Street to Sauk Trail. So we wanted to take a look and see how this stretch of I-80 really stacks up. The top 3 rows, I split the 16-mile stretch surrounding Joliet into 3 different portions to give us kind of equal measures between the different, to match up to kind of the distance of the other 2 stretches of road. So this also gives you an idea of what particular stretches may be a little more problematic. So I'm going to direct your attention to where that teal box is, and you can see I'm just looking at the crash rate between 2010 and 2016. And the crash rate is an equation that takes into account the distance that you're traveling over that stretch, and also the amount of traffic that's traveling on it. So it gives you a fair comparison between all of them, accounting for areas that have more traffic. So you can see that the stretch of I-80 holds at 0.15 as the crash rate. This is for fatal crashes again. And that is the lowest. Now, I-80 near Joliet isn't the highest. It's I-57 does have a slightly higher crash rate. But it's interesting to note that I-80 in Joliet has a higher crash rate than that near Tinley Park, where Tinley Park does have so much more traffic. So particularly those 2 stretches between I-55 and Route 53, and then Route 53 to US 30, both of those have higher crash rates. So then I want to take a look at all crashes, and these are graphics that were prepared by the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. And it gives you a picture of where all the crashes are located along each stretch of road. If I can see here. So if you can, going eastbound, this is traveling this way, westbound is traveling this way. This gives you can see this is where I-55 is, this is where Route 7 is. So these are kind of the mile markers along the stretch of road. The blue lines indicate the number and the occurrence of crashes along the road, where they're located, and the number that are in that area. So just comparing the stretch of Joliet to Tinley Park, there's a lot more blue around Joliet, and the more blue there is, that means the more crashes that there were. So I think looking at that is a pretty remarkable difference. Now if you compare along the line, so say we go up here and this is the 300 mark, so that's 300 total crashes per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and the number of times that Joliet hits the 300 mark going both eastbound and westbound is 23, whereas in Tinley Park, they only hit the 300 mark 10 times. Mind you, there is, the stretch in Tinley Park is a slightly shorter stretch, it's about 9.5 miles that we're representing on this graphic, whereas the Joliet stretch is 11 miles. So there's a slight difference there, but it's still a pretty astounding difference in being able to see how the crashes compare. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to just taking a look at the growth in the region in the past and where we're expected to be in the future. So looking between 2000 and 2010, just the population growth, you can see 5 of the municipalities that this stretch of I-80 intersects. The growth rates are astounding between that time period. So with Minooka at 175% and Shorewood at 103%, it's even more astounding when you compare it to what the 7-county Chicago region is on the whole. So that's the 7 counties of Northeast Illinois only grew at a rate of 4%, whereas these 5 municipalities were growing at remarkably higher rates. It really indicates how fast the southwest suburbs are growing. That's also indicated by the growth that Will County is experiencing at 35%. So to really highlight that, I wanted to also look at the industrial development. And as I'm sure all of you are aware, the amount of industrial development and warehousing and distribution development has really grown since 2001. So we're going to step through a couple different graphics here. Unfortunately, we're going to have one in the middle that isn't going to, yes, okay, it is updated. So we got 2001, you can see it, and then we step to 2005, sorry, I'm going too fast here, and you can see the growth and up to, goodness, to 2013. So let me step back and go through that again once I get my clicker under control here. So 2001, 2005, 2013. So you can see this is the land use that is used for these industrial sources. And you can see that it's growing quite a bit. And in particular, that's of interest to us related to I-80 because these developments add a significant amount of truck traffic to the road. And seeing what this growth has already been, and this isn't even accounting for some more recent development that's happened in the last couple of years here, seeing what that's already done, where are we going to be in the future if improvements aren't made to I-80? We're already struggling here and seeing concerns, so it's really kind of a picture of where we need to go in order to adapt to what these developments are calling for. So now looking towards the future, you can see the anticipated population and employment growth through the year 2040. So this is a projection that CMAP does with their traffic model to understand, because population and employment are really the 2 main variables that impact what traffic is going to be doing and what the traffic volumes are. So you can see that Will and Kendall County are anticipated to grow population by 76% and 100% compared to only 29% for the 7-county Chicago region. Again, contributing to the fact that the southwest suburbs are really growing at an alarming rate. And you can look at employment figures and you get similar results there. So now we just wanted to take a look one last item at the economic impact on the area. And so moving forward from here, we understand all the information, understanding all the information that I've presented here and that we're showing, summarizing. And like I said, the question comes, where do we go from here? Improvements need to be made, as we know, and IDOT is already pursuing that with studies that have been identified for short-term improvements, also long-term improvements. Options for long-term solutions is kind of what's being explored at the moment. But we wanted to take a look at what some of those improvements would be. So like I said, there was a project that was identified in the long-range transportation plan. And it gives a general figure as to what the investment would be for these short-term improvements and long-term improvements. So in looking at that, we wanted to see what the economic benefits of the construction of this would be. For the short-term improvements, which are already planned and programmed for the next couple of years here, we anticipated would provide 836 jobs, and $139 million to the local economy. Looking towards future improvements, which as is proposed in the plan, it's not necessarily what the option is going to be. That's something to be figured out and what's still being studied by IDOT. But the future improvements would be complete rehabilitation with an addition of a lane, and factoring that in, that would anticipate, we anticipate that would create over 12,000 jobs and over $2 billion to the local economy. So obviously, this shows that there's a benefit to the economy by moving forward with this project. But really more importantly, we want to create a safer road and offer those mobility benefits for residents and businesses. So I'm just going to wrap up really quickly by saying that infrastructure investment is vital. We've seen here what I-80 needs and what the issues are, particularly in this region in Joliet. But it's important to remember that this isn't just a problem in Joliet. There are projects all over the state that are having similar issues and need improvements. And we're not able to get there because we don't have adequate infrastructure investment at this point. That's really my takeaway from everything here. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. You can see my contact information. Again, the report is going to be officially released tomorrow morning. You can find that at illinoisepi.org. We welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Randall Blankenhorn is a lifelong Illinois resident who served as IDOT Secretary under Governor Bruce Rauner since 2015. As Secretary of IDOT, he's focused on strengthening our status as the transportation hub of North America. Under his leadership, IDOT has embraced new approaches, investing in infrastructure. At his direction, the department is striving to become the most innovative department of transportation of the country with the goal of providing safer and cost-efficient transportation to the people of Illinois. Prior to his appointment, Blankenhorn was the Executive Director of CMAP. His appointment as Transportation Secretary, Representative returned to IDOT. He worked there for 22 years. He was the point person, number of major infrastructure projects throughout Illinois, including I-355 through Will County. Thank you for that. And the new Mississippi River Bridge in Metro East. Ladies and gentlemen, from IDOT, Randy Blankenhorn.
Thank you, Scott, and thanks for inviting me today. Actually, I heard on the radio on the way here that it is International Thank You Day, so thank you all for coming and really spending part of your evening with us to talk about what is some serious issues that I think we all have to face. At the end of the day, I think Mary's concluding remarks are where I want to start, and that is that transportation infrastructure drives the economy of Will County, and it drives the economy of the state of Illinois, and we have to provide it in a manner that's safe and that's efficient, and we need to find new ways to do that. When we talk about what Mary had to show us is not news to most of us. It's what we deal with every day, but it's good to see the graphics. It's good to see the things to really bring it to life for all of us. Our roadways were built more than 50 years ago here, the interstates. They were not built to today's standards, and I think that's part of the issue that we're facing. They have narrow shoulders. We have a lot of bridges. We have a lot of trucks. And this is not unusual, as Scott said, for what's going on around Illinois. I just did a groundbreaking for a bridge over the Mississippi River in central Illinois. The two trucks can't even go over the bridge at the same time. They have to stop on one side and make a call to make sure that it's clear. It was built for Model Ts, not for semis. And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of our infrastructure is today. And we need to find a way to invest in it in a smarter way that brings real results. And at the end of the day, it is about safety. Safety is our #1 priority at IDOT. We have had, for the second year in a row, over 1,000 deaths on our highways. 1,000 families didn't have someone come home, and that's tragic. Sometimes when we talk about numbers like that, they just become statistics. And they're more than statistics. They're real lives, they're real people, they're real families, and we have to work together to figure out how to get that under control and make it so that we can get people home every night. Mary talked a little bit about some of the things that we're doing, and I just want to spend a couple of minutes on where we are on some of these issues. I actually want to listen more than I want to talk tonight, to hear what your thoughts are, to hear what is concerning you and how we might work together to move these projects along. But Mary mentioned on I-80 there are really two different processes going on. One is near-term improvements, one is long-term improvements. The near-term improvements in this section really are focused on our bridges. They're focused on doing some auxiliary work, some shoulder work to make those safer. Ultimately, we have the interchanges that we have to work out, but right now in our program, we have $111 million to fix those bridges, the 5 bridges that are in central Joliet. They're going to move forward. We have the funding for them, and we need to move them as quickly as we can. But there are 30-some bridges here, not just 10. And we need to figure out how to get to the other 70 or 80 or $90 million that it's going to cost to replace or repair those. That's an important piece for us. I want to talk also about the long term. Marie mentioned that we are looking, and we are wrapping up at the end of this year, the phase 1 study for the long-term improvements. This is including wider shoulders, rehabilitated interchanges. I think the interchanges that we have are a big part of the problem. They're substandard. They weren't created for the truck lengths we have today. So we've got to deal with those interchanges. But we're talking about a project that is over $1 billion. The new river bridge over the Des Plaines River is more than $300 million by itself to replace. Big numbers, not that we should shy away from them, but somehow together we're going to have to find a way to find the revenue to make those projects happen. The phase 1 study, as I said, will be complete in 2018. We're going to look at where we're going with this and how fast we can move it in. But truthfully, in today's revenue situation, we're barely able to maintain what we have. And that is our #1 priority, is maintaining the system that we have in a condition that's safe. Mary talked about some of our bridges. We don't allow people on unsafe bridges. So even though they might be structurally deficient, maybe they might have issues, we're making sure that they're safe for the traveling public, but that doesn't mean they're in the condition that we want them to be or that you want them to be. On I-55, which is another piece of what you all wanted to talk about today, we will be finishing up this year the US 6 interchange. It's a big project for us. It's going to make a big difference. We have funding for I-55 at Lorenzo Road and Illinois 129. We have some issues we have to work out with the Federal Highway Administration on the environmental work, but those are relatively minor problems that we're going to have. And as I said, the funding is available to completely rebuild those 2 interchanges. We will be ready this spring to start work on I-55 at Weber Road. The county has a piece of that. IDOT has a piece of that. We're working closely with the county to try to coordinate those schedules to make sure we're not disrupting traffic 2 different times as we work on this interchange. But we have the funding. We're ready to go. That's another big, important project. And I don't want us to forget about the number of projects we've completed over the last decade or so. We did add lanes to I-80 east of US 30. We added lanes to I-55. I was happy to be a part of the I-355 extension that opened just over a decade ago. The Arsenal Road interchange was a huge project for us, the most expensive project that we have ever done in an interchange in the entire state. We've widened a number of the arterials in Will County to 4 lanes to try to make that arterial system work better. We are the major funder for the multimodal center in Joliet, which is going to give people options about how they travel. We're not resting on our laurels, though. I think the why I bring this up is that to say that IDOT understands and the state of Illinois understands that we have issues here, that we have problems here, and that we need to find solutions sooner rather than later. I want to welcome a lot of our state officials, state legislators who have worked closely with us and brought us their concerns about how we make sure that we're keeping this at the forefront of how we think about what it is that we need to do on I-80 and I-55. Many of them are here. Representative McDermott unfortunately couldn't be, and she sent her wishes and said it's an important piece for her as well as it is for all of our state legislators as well as our local elected officials, Larry Walsh, our mayors, and others. We got to do this together. At the end of the day, IDOT isn't going to fix this problem by itself. We need to have our communities, we need to have the county, we need to have the public helping us think through what are the right solutions, how do we do it faster, how do we do it more efficiently, how do we more wisely spend taxpayer dollars to make sure that we're providing that safe, efficient system that we really want to talk about. Finally, because I really would rather listen to you, and you're going to hear from the tollway in a minute, But the Tollway and IDOT have funded a study through CMAP, who you've heard a lot about tonight, to look at the future of the expressway system. What does the expressway system in northeastern Illinois look like? How do we improve it? And we told them as they went into this study that we don't care if it's a tollway or a state highway at this point. It doesn't matter what it is today for what it should be tomorrow, that they need to think bigger about what that future looks like. I-80 is a big piece of this study, and if we hear something tonight, Kevin and I, that says we need to do something more as a piece of this study, we will. But we really think this is the basis for how we think long-term about I-80, about I-55, about the expressway system in general, and what a 21st century expressway system looks like. How does it act? How does it handle trucks? How does it handle the explosive growth that is happening here in Will County? And what are we going to do to bring people home alive? So Scott, thanks so much for having me, and I would be happy to answer questions, but I am more interested in hearing what you all have to say. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Randy. We invited the Tollway tonight because they could be one potential solution, as Randy just said. Kevin Ardle was appointed COO of the Illinois Tollway in December of 2016. As COO, he oversees the operations of the state's 294-mile tollway system with a $1.3 billion annual budget. Under Kevin's leadership as COO, the tollway delivered Route 390 tollway, flipped the switch on the new Jane Addams Memorial, Smart Road, I-90, and moved towards a cashless, all-electronic tolling system. Prior to joining the tollway, Kevin had extensive experience in Illinois government and politics, serving multiple of senior policy, legislative, and campaign roles. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Ardle from the Illinois Tollway Authority.
Thank you, Scott, and thanks to all the citizens who showed up today for a transportation town hall. I'm not a newbie to transportation town halls, but to see a crowd like this on an evening like this is a testament to the concern that y'all have for the region. And I think, to even kind of reinforce that, I mean, the demonstration of elected officials that are here is pretty powerful. So County Executive Walsh, Representatives Manley, Welter, Batnick, Senator McGuire. I mean, there's a lot of firepower in this room here to listen, to try to find solutions. And, over the course of the last month, we've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people in Will County. Our chairman met with County Executive Walsh. And, I think it's uncommon that you have a team here driven with some forward-thinking ideas, trying to find some innovative solutions for a real challenging problem in this region. And there's no doubt that Will County is facing huge transportation problems. I think Mary's presentation laid it out pretty quickly. The rapid escalation in growth after 2000, coupled with some challenging infrastructure funding years, has created a challenge here in Will County that you really don't face in anywhere else in the 7-county region. The tollway prides itself as being a team player. We complement IDOT in the counties where we can. We take a leadership role inside the system that we operate, but overall, transportation is a teamwork, and we have to complement each other and work as a team to address the challenges as they come up. And to kind of dovetail a little bit on what Randy was saying, we have, we saw the emerging challenges of infrastructure funding and such developing over the course of the last couple of years. So we are in the midst of a pretty bold and innovative study. We're funding this through CMAP, and we've asked them to kind of tear down the bureaucratic boundaries that exist and look at transportation in this region at a completely, through a new paradigm. What works, what doesn't, where do we need to expand, and most importantly, how do we fund it? And so we expect to see results from that study probably in the next 4 to 5 months. And hopefully that then can be shared with the policymakers, many of whom are in this room, to drive a forward-thinking solution as we approach these issues. Currently the tollway is in the process of rebuilding 294, which is kind of the backbone of our system. We're finalizing, we're still working on plans to provide western access into O'Hare. And overall, we work with IDOT as a team to address emerging issues. We're working on the P3 project here in Will County collectively here, and we're working on it. We're working with IDOT as well, and looking at options for 55 to kind of serve as a complement to them as they look to expand lanes on 55. So, again, kind of along the lines of what Randy said, we're here to listen. We're going to work with IDOT, and we're going to work with your leadership team here to find solutions. But you've got a great team, and we look forward to hearing your input. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Our final presenter tonight, before we get into some public comments, is Mark Polis. Mark is Executive Director of the Indiana, Illinois, Iowa Foundation for Fair Contracting. After spending several years in the trades while attending night school, he graduated from Northeastern Illinois University with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, went on to receive his Juris Doctor and Certificate in Labor and Employment Law from Chicago Kent of Law. While in law school, he clerked for the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150 Legal Department, later became the Associate General Counsel for the Operating Engineers. He's a proud Local 150 member, sits on the Board of Directors for the Illinois Prevailing Wage Council, the National Alliance for Fair Contracting, and Midwest Operating Engineers Information Technologies. Mark is admitted to practice law in the state of Illinois, Washington, D.C., Court of Appeals, U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, and the United States District Court for the Northern District of Indiana. He's a member of the American Bar Association, Illinois State Bar, and Chicago Bar. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Polis. Mark?
Thanks, Scott. So I've been doing transportation for a bunch of years, and I'm gonna try to share a personal story, which I have never actually shared in public. So bear with me while I do it. But I'm gonna ask a couple questions first. First, how many people in this audience have been in a car accident? Show of hands. Most of you. How many people have had an injury due to a car accident? Smaller amount of hands. How many people in this audience have lost somebody in a traffic accident? Fair amount of people, right? I'm not surprised to see that due to the nature of why we called this meeting today. So thanks to Scott and Jim Murphy for asking me to help out with this tonight. So I'm gonna walk through, a personal story that just a couple of you have been able to unfortunately share. So when we're talking about transportation, oftentimes we talk about things like, there's potholes, somebody's gonna get a bent rim, somebody's gonna blow a tire, somebody's gonna have more money they gotta spend on maintenance on a vehicle, right? Those aren't real live faces, right, that you're putting on the transportation problem, right? The real live faces that you're putting on it are those few hands that went up in the audience of people that have actually lost someone, a loved one or a friend, or an acquaintance or somebody they know, a neighbor, a mother, a father, a son, a daughter. So it's not just this mild annoyance when we're talking about transportation. Yeah, the traffic congestion, it'd be nice to be able to get to the city quicker. It'd be nice to be able to get down 80, 94 quicker. It'd have been nice not to sit in traffic coming over to this meeting tonight, right? Those are mild annoyances in life. But when we're talking about transportation, Randy said it, Kevin said it, Mary said it, it's about safe transportation. It's about investing in a system that is not reliant on a population of the 1950s and the 1960s. It's reliant on a population that is true to today, which is 2018. We've got intermodal facilities down in the Will County, Joliet area. We've got an massive expansion of population, yet we've done very little to invest in the basic infrastructure that we have in this particular area. So I'm going to try to walk through this. So it's 2006. It's August, summer night. Get off work. I go off to my golf league when I had time to do that. Meet my buddy Dan out there and some other friends. We golf that night. We get done. Have a little drink, have some dinner. We hang out. We start sharing stories. Dan starts telling me about the day, starts telling me about how, wife and him got into it this morning. you know, he's tired of it. He's so aggravated, but yeah, he kind of feels bad. He's been calling her a bunch of times. She's not answering the phone. She must still be pissed. She had left that morning with her mother and her 2 sons in a minivan. And she had left, and she went down 8094 and was making her way to Ohio. And Dan and I kept talking, got done, got in the car, we left. We had met there in separate cars. We're driving down 355, and we get just past the toll booth at Boughton Road, and he pulls off to the side of the road. Wondering something must be wrong with the car. So I pull over too, pull up behind him. He gets out of the car, he looks and he goes, "They're gone." So I mean, they're gone. He said, "They're gone." I said, "Who's gone?" He said, "Angie, the kids. They're gone. They're dead." So what do you mean? What happened? He said, "There was a fiery accident on 8094, right? They died in the accident." I said, "No, that can't be what happened. You gotta be kidding me." I said, "Get in the car." He said, "No, I'm okay." I said, "No, get in the car." He said, "No, I'm okay." Gets in the car, continues driving. I called the Naperville Police Department. We live in Naperville. Called the police department. I said, "Have you guys gotten any call?" And they said, "Sure have. There's a squad car outside of the front of his house. We'll meet you there." I said, "Okay." Still in total disbelief. So I called one of the guys who worked for me at the time. He was the president of the FOP. Called him and I said, "Hey, Tim, have you heard about an accident?" He says, what is it?" I said, "A whole family." He said, "Yep." He said, "Yeah, it's true." I said, "You gotta be kidding me." All right, so I go to Dan's house, pull up, it's an 8-foot squad car there. We walk in, and unless you've been in this position to see what this does to a person, right? And I'm not gonna claim that this story or a lot of the stories that people can tell is always going to be avoidable by investment in transportation. But I am gonna tell you that there are certain circumstances that can be avoided. You know, not every accident is just driver error. We can't continue to have a transportation and infrastructure system, not just in Will County, not just in the state of Illinois, but in this entire country, that we continue not to invest in and have to have people live through those types of stories. I mean, it's crazy in this day and age that we don't have the wherewithal to raise the money to actually invest in our infrastructure so that people like my friend Dan don't have to go through these types of situations. So, like Scott said, you know, I'm a little tired of hearing the same stories, and I get the news alerts on every one of these accidents that happens too. And it's not just these. These aren't just happening on 80 here, they're happening all over the place. And I can tell you that from doing this transportation and infrastructure for the last decade, a lot of these things are avoidable. When you start thinking about the way that we invest in transportation and infrastructure, think about some of the other basic utilities that we pay for every single day. I just got a bill for my water, electric, and garbage that was $401 for the month, right? So the basic convenience to walk in and turn on a light, take the garbage to the curb, and turn on the water faucet or take a shower. I pay $401 for the month for my family, right? It's not $400 every single month, but it's about $2,500 a year. When you think about the way that we primarily fund transportation, we fund it through driver's license fees, we fund it through license plates and registrations and titles, and mainly we fund it through motor fuel taxes. It's 19 cents a gallon and 21.5 cents a gallon for diesel fuel, and we haven't raised it in, Randy, what, 20 years? 22 years. We haven't raised it. Just by inflationary numbers, we've lost $10 billion in spending power for transportation just by not tying it to inflation, right? That is not sustainable. We start thinking about the conveniences of a cell phone. I get a cell phone bill every single month for my wife and my 2 kids, and it's $250 every single month. It's so that a kid can sit there and take a picture selfie, put a filter on it through Snapchat, and send it to his friend. But I'm willing to spend $250 so my kid can take a cool selfie, right? I pay for the internet in my house so that, internet and cable in the house so that people can watch Game of Thrones on a Sunday night, and my kids can have the highest speed so they have no buffering while they're watching the episodes of The Office. $250 a month. We spend, on average for the drivers, less than $500 a year in taxes, fees, and assessments to drive on the roads in the state of Illinois. And by the way, even if you're driving somewhere else, that's what you're paying for the transportation and infrastructure system in this country. You drive anywhere. You get on a highway, you go anywhere. And that's what we're paying. Yet we have this problem with having the conversation and, taking the tough votes and having the difficult conversations about adequately funding transportation and infrastructure. Yet I got to sit on the side of a road with a guy who loses his 15-month-old son and his 2-year-old son, his 39-year-old wife, and his 71-year-old mother-in-law. It's crazy. So I've been doing this for 10 years, but it's not just that I work with the labor management group and I work for the operating engineers and a bunch of contractors, and these guys will do road constructions. I see a lot of faces in the room. I've been in committee hearings and I've talked to them. They can tell you, it probably comes through that I don't have a passion for this necessarily for that. I have much more of a passion for this, that nobody should ever have to sit in somebody's house and sit there and have a conversation. I sat there with the Naperville Police Department guy, young guy, and I sat there and I said, if I were you, I would unholster your gun and I'd go put it in the car right now. And he kind of looked at me strange. And I said, brother, if I was in this guy's position, I'd grab that gun right now. That's it. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, you're probably right. I mean, nobody should have to endure something like this, losing kids, losing mothers, losing fathers, losing mother-in-laws, when a lot of the times these things are avoidable. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Mary's report and the things that she laid out about the infrastructure and the transportation that we have in this area, it is inadequate, right? So it's not just every one of these accidents that you hear about that is driver error and it is avoidable. Many of these accidents could be avoided if we would adequately invest in transportation. I'll take you through just a couple things that we've done. It's been nearly a decade since the last time in the state of Illinois we've truly had a capital bill. We've gotten away from, over the last, Illinois First, right? Was really the first big capital bill some years ago. We've gotten away from this pay-as-you-go. We've gotten away from this figuring out what the cost is and then meeting the revenues to match the cost and taking care of transportation and infrastructure. We've gotten away from it. We've gotten into this boom and bust cycle. We've got into this, everybody gets excited to talk about a capital bill. And capital bills are great, and we need them. But we don't need them to take care of the basic infrastructure needs. We need them when we want to add major capacity or a new highway, the Ileana Expressway, right? That's where you need a capital bill. Or you need the tollway to step in. Or you need a bonding capacity, right, to span this over long periods of time. But what we need to do is we need to get back to a time where we get away from just relying on capital bills to pay for the pay-as-you-go, and we need to use those for the larger scale projects that are still needed to add capacity and lessen congestion. We took some steps. So in the 1930s, I had somebody dig up minutes from a so the road builders, right? So the road builders and association, been around for almost 100 years. Dug up some old minutes, and they were having a discussion about we got to protect the road fund. We got to stop taking money from the road fund and using it for other purposes. It's the 1930s. Finally, in 2016, we were able to bring forward a constitutional amendment in the state of Illinois. The legislature virtually passed it, virtually unanimously, in both the House and the Senate, and it went to the voters. And the voters spoke, and here's what they said. 80% of the people who voted in the election in 2016 said, yes, we think transportation is important, yes, we think investment is important, and we think it's even more important that we protect those dollars. So we now have in the state of Illinois, Safe Roads Amendment, right, passed, part of the Illinois State Constitution, something that had been worked on for nearly 100 years, right, but finally got it done. So that's really, quite honestly, it's step one, right? The public is kind of sort of done with this, well, if you raise this, then what are we going to use it for over there, right? Now we know what it's going to be used for. But I got news for you, right? We are at some point going to have to take the next step. We are at some point going to have to get away from a 20-some-year-old 19-cent a gallon motor fuel tax. And I got better news for you. We're going to have to get away from motor fuel tax altogether. So for years we have known, and for years they have studied, that the primary way that we fund transportation is through motor fuel taxes. And they've also known that as the federal government steps in and passes new regulations, and the motor companies come out with electric cars and hydrogen cars and new CAFE standards that raise the amount of miles per gallon the cars get, right? Some of these cars now are getting 35 to 50 miles a gallon, which means if you're getting more miles per the gallon, you're paying less money in motor fuel tax. So the primary way that we fund transportation continues to decline, and we know this. Yet, we still haven't taken the proper steps forward to fix what we already know to be the problem. So there's a couple things, right, on the horizon, right? I'm not claiming any one of these is the best idea, but I can tell you that things that are being done in other states, road usage charges or vehicle miles traveled, right? Instead of relying on motor fuel taxes, you don't charge by the gallon, you charge by the mile, right? That is not a declining revenue source. That is an inclining revenue source because we typically have more miles traveled every single year in the state of Illinois than we have in the previous years. Infrastructure banks and P3s. I think both Randy and Kevin talked about that. Listen, infrastructure banks and P3s or public-private partnerships like the Ileana Expressway down in this area was poised to be, those aren't answers, right? Those are solutions to some problems, but not answers to the problems with the infrastructure and the highways and bridges in this particular area. But they are solutions to some short-term problems. Ileana Expressway being one of those potential solutions. It was the only real way to fund a large-scale multi-billion-dollar project in a short period of time. And I mentioned it before, capital bills, right? Capital bills and bonding. We need that as well. But I can tell you that we have looked at transportation for the last 10 years. I know that the Illinois Economic Policy Institute has done it. I've read multiple things from both Randy and Kevin's agencies as well. You know, our estimates are somewhere in the neighborhood of we are short $2.5 billion every single year just to maintain what we have, right? We need at least that much more money. The motor fuel tax in the state of Illinois, I think it's less now, but the last time I looked was around $1.3 billion is what it took in. The sales tax on motor fuels actually goes to the General Revenue Fund, does not fund transportation at all. But if you take a look around the state of Illinois, everybody else seems to be taking some action. Michigan raised the motor fuel tax. Iowa raised the motor fuel tax. Indiana passed the single largest transportation infrastructure bill that I've seen in at least the last 10 years. I think it's an additional $1.3 billion in transportation investment in the state of Indiana. So we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to do something not just in this area, but we're going to have to do something in this state so that I'm lucky. You know, my story is now going on 12 years old, right? And thank God that's the only story I have. I don't want another story like that. And it's a story about my friend who lost his 2 sons and his wife and his mother-in-law. You know, it's not me telling the story about how I lost my son and my daughter and my wife and my mother and my mother-in-law. So God bless the hands that were raised for the people that have lost people to accidents, whether it was just driver error or was a lack of investment in infrastructure. God bless those that were injured in those as well. But we need much less stories like those and much less stories like mine by investing in the transportation infrastructure in this state. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. And thanks once again. Let's give a round of applause for Mary, Randy, Kevin, and Mark for coming tonight. We appreciate it. I did, before we move on to some questions that I have and hopefully some questions you have as well. Mayor Bob Odekirk, I know you're in a meeting today, and Murph, can we take a mic over there? Considering infrastructure and what we're doing regarding truck traffic, you were, I believe, with IDOT today regarding the Humboldt Road Bridge from Center Point North, were you not?
I was with IDOT at Schaumburg today. Was not over Hoboken, it was over a different project here in Joliet.
Okay.
I've met with Mr. Blankenhorn and his staff repeatedly. But about the Hoboken Road Bridge, I can tell you, Governor Rauner was in Joliet last week or 2 weeks ago, talked about the bridge. There was reference to P3's public-private partnerships. The Hoboken Road Bridge will be a public-private partnership. As it stands, there's no money coming from the city of Joliet. There's $21 million pledged by the state of Illinois, and the rest is private money being raised by Centerpoint between $160 and $180 million. So I know I've been to Washington, D.C. talking about this issue. I've been complimented by labor leaders in Washington, D.C. and elected officials who are pointing to the bridge as the way going forward. You made reference, Mr. Paulus, to the Ileana Expressway. That's how that bridge is going to be built. And I guess you guys could probably speak better to it than me, but that appears to be the way these major projects are going to be done in the future.
Okay, so when do you believe you'll get started with construction?
I think Centerpoint is poised to make announcements. They haven't done it yet. We recently voted 2 or 3 weeks ago on an intergovernmental agreement with Will County dealing with the property on Vetter Road. So I would imagine you're going to hear announcements in the next couple months, and hopefully construction starts this year, this spring or this summer.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Odekirk. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming today. All right, a couple of questions that are probably on your mind, and if you do have a question, we're going to, in just a couple of seconds, if any elected officials have any questions for our expert panel up here. But Mary's, the number that blew me away, 37 fatalities, and we just had a 38th just outside the zone last Friday. It was a mile east or west of Ridge Road where, again, traffic is backed up for no reason, and a minivan slammed into the back of a semi-truck, and a woman, a 29-year-old from Bradley Bourbonnais, lost her life. So we can even add another number to the list. But I was having a conversation today, and Mark hit it on the head. A gentleman from Shannon, as a matter of fact, I know we have a big Shannon contingent here tonight, said, you know, it's not the roads, it's the drivers. And I said, then how come we have 3 times as many fatal crashes through Joliet as Tinley does, and they have, what, 40,000 more cars a day? It's because their roads are modern. They have 3 lanes in each direction. They have the concrete wall in between. They have signage up saying, slow down, or don't drink and drive, or be careful, it's 20 minutes to 57 when it really should be 10 minutes. When people see that, it makes a difference. So I thought that was one of the huge numbers that we heard here tonight. And then the blue, if we put Mary's PowerPoint back up maybe later, the number of the blue shaded area compared to Tinley, it's night and day. And again, they have 20 to 30 to 40 more thousand cars a day than we do. If that doesn't speak to the need for infrastructure improvement, I don't know what does. Randy, maybe you can touch on this. Ileana, I think we have mics for each one of you right there, and I think Colin will bring them up. I believe they're turned on. You can take them out of that stand if you'd like. Ileana Expressway, where exactly are we with the Ileana?
The Joliet Expressway is still on.
I thought it was on. Straight up towards you there, Kevin. No. Colin, turn it up. There we go. Okay.
All right, I'll use this one. The Ileana Expressway is still suspended. We have worked with the state of Indiana to try to satisfy the lawsuit, and I believe that has been done to our satisfaction. It's sitting in federal highways, but at this point in time, we are not moving any further into moving forward.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the federal government. Do we have anybody representing Congressman Foster or Lipinski here tonight? We do? Well, good. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate that. We have 5 different congressmen that represent parts of I-80 going through Will County, which is about 4 too many, but that's a political argument I'll have for another day, including one that lives on the south side of Chicago, but again, that's another argument for another day. How can we get the feds involved with this and make them realize that we have a pressing issue here?
Yeah, and I'll start, certainly jump in. This is not just a state of Illinois problem. This is a national problem. We are under-investing in our infrastructure, particularly our transportation infrastructure across this country. One of the, I don't know if Mary actually showed it, but a stat that was told to me this morning in a meeting, it is that when we talk about trucks in Will County, 63% of these trucks are through trucks. They're starting somewhere outside of Will County, they're ending up somewhere outside of Will County. To a large degree, that doesn't necessarily make it Will County's problem to fund. It means that it's a state problem, and importantly, it's a federal problem. I think that we have to work together to make sure that the federal government plays its appropriate role in funding the infrastructure. Our system of highways is about interstate commerce, and it's about moving people and goods, and it is not just the role that we have to play at this level. When we talk about reticence at the state level to raise revenues, we are truly doing it with smoke and mirrors in Washington. There hasn't been an increase in a long time in funding, and we all need to get together and say our transportation infrastructure, the safety and efficiency of our system is worth investing in.
Anyone else have a comment on Ileana or the federal government?
Someone help me here, would you?
Let's get back to 80, and I know public-private partnerships, but let's talk about the tollway's involvement. Would, Kevin, the tollway be willing to take I-80 off IDOT's hands and have it become a tollway? How would that process carry itself out?
Well, I think we have to complete our study first. And, and that's what we're looking at. And this study came out, this was well advanced. We put it out, early last year to begin the process of looking at what a revitalized infrastructure and transportation system in Illinois would look like. No holds barred, look at every option available, tolling, non-tolling. So I think that's truly the first step. I mean, there are options at the federal level. There's a couple of tolling pilot programs that both IDOT and Tollway have looked at as options, but the first step is truly feasibility.
People talk about, well, we can't do it. Well, we can. Already through parts of Illinois on I-80, there's a 5-mile stretch near the Indiana border. That's a tollway. Indiana's got a tollway on I-80. Ohio does as well, and I think parts of Pennsylvania as well. So would we have to change any type of legislation? Would there have to be a jurisdictional transfer? Maybe both of you could speak to that.
Yes.
All of them, okay.
Yeah,
easy answer.
And it is the answer. I mean, the fact is that under current federal law and under current state law, changes would have to be made. I tell my staff, and I'm sure Kevin tells his, we shouldn't be afraid of changing law if it's the right thing to do. If this is the direction that we all collectively think we should go, then we work to change the law. But it isn't something we can just flip a switch and do.
Okay. Mark, do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, so it doesn't always have to involve, right, a major federal lift, or we have to have a federal statute to change this, right? You have the Elgin O'Hare Expressway, right, that was once a highway, then tolled. It was a major rebuild, which was then considered to be a quote-unquote new highway. You can add lanes capacity, right, heavy overweight vehicles, moving trucks into particular lanes. There's a lot of options, and at least in my discussions with Bob Schillerstrom, who's the head over there at the tollway, these are all of the options that they're looking at, right? So it kind of starts with the highest level, which is you've got to go to DC, lobby for a change to the federal highway laws that would then allow you to toll these particular things, all the way down to the level of, well, so long as it's considered a rebuild and or a added capacity, those types of things. So there is a range, and I think that's what both Kevin and Randy are alluding to, which is these are the things that they're looking at, right, in terms of looking at the highway systems, not just 80, but the highway systems in the entire state of Illinois. So, I applaud the fact that they're, have taken a step in that direction. I'm not going to kid anybody here that we're walking out of here tonight saying next Tuesday, right, here's the plan. But I got to tell you, when I met with Scott and Jim for breakfast a while back and talked about doing this, this is the step in the right direction, right? You have to get people that are the community involved in order to voice their opinions about this and show up to things like this in order to effectuate change, right? If nobody's out there talking about it and it's just politicians under the dome in Springfield or at the Capitol in DC, and they're not hearing from people, this is not an issue that they're taking up. So this is a very good first step in the right direction.
One more question regarding the tollway, assuming control of this. How would the funding work? who would pay for the rebuild and the redesign? Would it be IDOT, because you haven't collected any money on it yet? Would it be an outlay of capital from the state, and then the tollway would pay the money back once they start bringing in revenue? How does that process work? And is there a model already in place?
We are really through the looking glass, huh?
Okay.
There's not a model for that, but there are, again, if the decision was made that we wanted to look at tolling, 80. I mean, there's scenarios. IDOT is looking at options for managed lanes and having that authority to toll on 55, and we fully support that effort. There are pilot programs at the federal level that we could initiate to ease sort of the regulatory burdens at the federal level. We'd still need state support for that. But I think our position from the tollway is, if it's in our system, it's our system. And so how that would work, we would want to, again, just completely spitballing here, but we'd want to make the improvements and structure the financing for the system on our own, and probably not have an intermingling of state or federal funds.
And Randy, that would be fine probably with Springfield, would it not?
Well, I think anytime Springfield can get something allegedly for free, they're for it. But yeah, I mean, I think if that's the decision, there are ways that the tollway bonds their projects that they could get the cash up front, pay it back over time with the tolls that are raised. If we did it in a managed lane kind of scenario, like we're talking about on I-55, much the same would occur, only a private developer would put the money up front and get paid through the toll. So Kevin's right, there are a lot of different alternatives about how to get there. We want to make sure, all of us, that it's the end game gets us to where we need to be.
Yeah, it just takes time, unfortunately. I want to wrap up in a moment with short-term Band-Aids. Does anybody else have any questions regarding the long-term future or the redesign of Interstate 80? Things we haven't touched on yet, whether it be elected officials, even a member of the media or so. Any questions regarding this topic right here?
I noticed on the blue chart that you had, Mary, there was a lot more accidents, both sections going eastbound all years. Is there a reason for that, or is that something anybody's talked about, or that you noticed?
Yeah, the question was more accidents. If you saw the blue chart, there was more accidents eastbound, correct? That was your question, than westbound. Maybe sunshine issues in the morning, maybe, but then again, there's sunshine issues in the afternoon. Mary, any ideas?
I'm going to be honest, it's not something that I've looked into that closely, so I'm not sure why the directional would be different. I suppose, yeah, it is a little higher. I guess it didn't seem extensive enough to where I. Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, I'll look at it tomorrow. And then a quick follow-up question. The 55 PPP seems to be teed up. Would that not immediately alleviate some of the traffic? I know I make my decision going east on the traffic on 55 or 80, and I can go both ways to go east. I can go 55 to 3, 55 to 80 to Indiana, or just 55 south to 80. Do you have any data on what the I-80 traffic volume, how much that would drop if the P3, which is teed up, and we can do it in Springfield pretty quickly, how that will relatively quickly alleviate traffic off of 80?
Yeah, I think, and I would have to get you exact numbers, but there is no question that that would alleviate some traffic issues on I-80. I travel to Springfield every week from Chicago. Usually it's about a 50-50 split on whether I take I-55 north and south, or if I take I-80 to 57. And we look at the travel times, and I make the best decision. So there's no question that if we make I-55 work better, it will have an impact on I-80. We can certainly look at what the numbers are, because I don't know those off the top of my head. But unquestionably, that will help someone. It's not going to solve the problems, but it will certainly alleviate some of the problems.
Yeah, Scott, and maybe for everybody is probably not super familiar with I-55 managed lanes. So the proposal that has been floated around for the last couple of years is I-55 from, I believe, 355 to the Dan Ryan to use the existing shoulders to put a inbound and outbound managed lane, meaning it's going to be tolled. Congestion pricing, I think, is the thought, right? So if there's a bunch of traffic, it's going to cost you a bunch, and if there's not a bunch of traffic, then it's not going to cost you much, because who wants to use it then? It would be funded through a public-private partnership. The rough estimate, somewhere in the $500 million range, right? 500 million, something like that.
400, just over 400 million.
So to get private investors to invest and then reap back the benefit in tolls through this managed lane on I-55. Currently, as it sits, there's a House joint resolution in the House, I believe, that is a requirement by the what's called the P3 Transportation Act. The legislature has to make an initial agreement, essentially. It's like a law, but it's a resolution. Once they, both the House and the Senate pass that, it then gives the authority to IDOT to then engage in a procurement process with a private entity. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. It's teed up, as Representative Batnick points out. That will likely move in the House and Senate, as far as I know. And then would be passed and moves on to IDOT to make that decision.
I'm glad you're optimistic that it's going to pass.
It's 2018, it's a new year.
Anyone else have any questions regarding long-term issues, redesign and reconstruction? Sir, we have a couple of them in the back. That's okay. Any questions at all?
Yeah, I want to know why, like today, right now, they're having a meeting in Elwood about another warehouse project.
North Point, yes.
I was a resident in New Lenox since 1983, and I now currently live in Crest Hill. My work is mostly on the south side of Chicago, so I've been traveling this highway for the last 30 years, and it's in bad shape, and the traffic and the congestion, the trucks from these container yards are very unsafe. You know, why aren't we putting impact fees on the warehousing that wants to come here? Why are we giving them free property taxes for 10 years with minimum wage jobs with no benefits? These are the questions I want answered by our local government. You know, we've got unsafe vehicles on our road, and then they're bringing in outside people who, from other communities that don't even live here. Minimum wage jobs up through personnel staffing resources. They don't even get benefits. Thousands of people with no benefits, and you guys want to raise gas prices. Middle class people, $40,000, try paying $500 a month in utilities.
All right, sir, thank you very much. We appreciate that. And that would be an issue. We have a lot of mayors here. If you'd like to talk with your mayor, I believe he's here, and your past mayor is here tonight as well. If you'd like to talk to them. But, you know, I think that's an interesting point. We were talking to John Grueling from the Will County CED. People have requested, the Sierra Club of Illinois has requested a moratorium on the building of warehouses in Will County until the infrastructure catches up. That was the Sierra Club. And many people don't disagree with them. We don't have the infrastructure in place yet. Villages continue to approve warehouses throughout the region. And at some point, as you saw Mary's chart up there, those were warehouses, people. Those aren't factories with $20 an hour jobs. Those are not factories. Those are logistic plants. And Elwood is in the process of approving a 2,200 acre facility, and that'll probably be done by the end of the month. And that's going to add another 30,000 cars in that region. So good points. We appreciate that. And you're right, that does cause headaches on I-80, especially once the Humboldt Road Bridge goes in. I think truck traffic will increase even more. Murphy?
We have another question. Okay, I'm just curious on Larkin Avenue and Chicago Street and Richards. Would the state ever step in and say they're just not safe at rush hour and close those ramps? Because it's a crapshoot. When you pull on to 80, you're shocked when you don't get hit. You know, it's not safe, so I'm curious, would you ever step in and close them until a better design is made?
You know, that's a great question, and that's what I wanted tonight to morph into. I would like to leave here tonight with some concrete ideas, and we can't get a commitment from the state to do something, but brainstorm some ideas of what we can do short term. I know the Illinois State Police is here tonight. We thank the Master Sergeant and the Head of Communications for coming. We know they're understaffed and they can't put enough patrols out on I-80. And I don't know if I'd want to pull a car over on I-80 myself. As Mary mentioned, very few shoulders. The ones that we do have aren't wide enough. I don't blame them for not pulling people over. So if we can brainstorm some ideas tonight that you've seen in other parts of the state, other parts of the country, I would love to give Randy a list of things we could do here tonight. And the first one would be shutting down a major interchange. I've never heard of that before, Randy. Is that something that's even possible?
Anything is possible. If it is unsafe, if we see a situation that we just can no longer tolerate and you can no longer tolerate, then something has to be done. Either we have to improve it or we have to shut it down. It's like a bridge. You know, our bridges are old, that doesn't make them unsafe, but when they get to unsafe, we either post them so that heavy trucks can't go over them or we shut them down. You know, we've got to find a way to solve those three interchanges are problems. We are fully aware of it, and you know, is it likely? You know, maybe it's not likely, but it is possible.
Sir?
Question. I understand tonight there's a big meeting in Elwood. They're talking about 2,000 acres of development, and they claim it's not going to affect the traffic on 53 or in the surrounding areas. It seems like nobody has a foresight of putting the horse before the cart and fix the problem and then make the new developments.
Right. Yes, that's a huge issue that, you know, we did touch on, and we continue to put warehouses far away from interstates, which I think is a big problem. That North Point is 8 miles away from their nearest interstate, which is, I think, unacceptable, but I'm not on the Elwood Village Board. We have a question from Jim, former Tollway Board member.
Good evening. Question around the I-80 study. When I was on the Tollway Board, we passed a resolution that the Ileana Expressway was a high priority for the Tollway, and that was in 2007. The Ileana Tollway, and I said it right, the Ileana Tollway should be built by the Tollway and not IDOT because of the capacity the Tollway has. Is the Ileana Expressway a part of the study that you're going to do on I-80? Because it is important. I-80 is pretty landlocked if you drive it, and I drive it pretty regularly. I'm not sure how you can widen the lanes or the shoulders much more than they are in a lot of those places. And I think it needs to be done and done by the tollway, one. And two, anybody that thinks that interstates are going to be free anywhere in the United States in the next 20 years isn't awake tonight.
Thank you, Jim. Kevin?
We are evaluating all the options in that CNAP study. So they're looking at a wide range of options, and they'll be reviewing that as well. So
that you would be willing to look at building the tollway, the Ileana. One of the three, I think there were 3 routes, weren't there, that they were considering?
Well, again, there's a study that's evaluating all these options. I mean, but in terms of where we're at, that really hasn't been on our plate.
Okay. Any other questions? Don?
Scott, I'm not sure if you answered the question. So is the Joliet Expressway included in that study? And then, well, one of the things we found out when we did the community-friendly freight mobility study in Will County is that a lot of the data that the state agencies and that are using on traffic flows and that are 10 years old or older. And we went through a lot of pains to make sure we got information from trucking companies to find out what the current status of things are. You know, we're now the home to the largest inland port in North America. 4% of the gross national product of the United States goes through our intermodal facilities. It's a big change from what it was 15 years ago or 10 years ago even. And the information that you're studying needs to be current, and I'd like to hear again if you're including the Joliet Expressway in that study.
The study's going to be a wide range scope, looking at all those things, and then you've also got CMAP on a 2050 program, looking again at a whole host of regional transportation options.
Any other questions? Merck, we have one right over here, across the way. You want to, if it's not a long one, you can yell it out and I'll repeat it? Okay, good, thanks.
Everything's talking to that about the federal, but the Fed, the state level, the whole system has to work in coordination. If the state's not looking at investing in infrastructure, figures get one different way. It's everyone's problem to solve. So the question is the state looking at an infrastructure bill or effort in 2018? And how can municipalities be held more accountable for approving development that puts the pressure on the road, but then they look at the state and the feds and say it's your job to fund the roads?
Randy, that's probably for you.
So I'll only answer the first part because the second part is a local government question. But we cannot point fingers at each other. The feds, the locals, the state, we have to be working together, raising revenue at all levels. I think that there are members of the General Assembly here today that could answer better than I whether they think there's a chance for capital bill. And honestly, I've tried to tell people the capital bill is the wrong name. The capital bill isn't what we need to be talking about. We've got to be talking about a revenue stream that is sustainable for the next 20 years. And honestly, quit borrowing money that we can't afford and no way to pay it back. We need to be talking about new revenue for transportation, and it needs to be happening at the state level as well as it is at the federal level. I think most of my colleagues at the state offices will tell you I've been talking about this in the 3 years since I've been here.
Senator McGuire.
This summer I heard Ray LaHood say that big things only happen in a bipartisan way. And he should know. He was a Republican congressman from Peoria, and then he served as President Obama's transportation secretary. So I mention that because the Transportation for Illinois Coalition, which has existed for some years, Mark's one of the founders, has assembled 18 legislators to date to meet weekly in Springfield during this coming legislative session to answer these questions. How are we going to fund much needed projects like adding lanes to Route 80? How are we going to pay for that? So we're going to meet for the first time in Springfield on January 30th. There's 18 members, 3 of us are from Will County, and we who are legislators from Will County and are privileged to serve on this Transportation for Illinois Coalition group will share what we come up with our fellow legislators here in Will County.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. We appreciate it. Any other? We have one right here.
I'd just like to say, I don't have a question, but this is a very refreshing session tonight. And I wish the public in this area could really be here because you have a lot of talented people in this room and you're on top of it, in my opinion, going forward. You know what has to be done. Everyone knows what has to be done. And I think you're moving in the right direction. And I wish a lot more people and business owners like myself in the community would know about this. So thank you very much for tonight.
Thank you. We do want to remind you that this will air on Joliet Cable Television and in Crest Hill also, so we'll give you some times coming up here. I have a few more questions for them before we spring them, but we have a couple more in the back. Yes?
Okay. Grundy County on Manuka, Brisbane Road, and 47, those are awesome interchanges. How is it possible that they have much less population than we do in Will County? A secret they came up with.
Yeah, Brisbane Road has always puzzled me just a little bit. I take it probably once a week and I'm always the only car on it. Literally, I'm always the only car on it. It's kind of nice, but it's there, and it may spur some development for Morris and Manuka and Shannon as they share that particular interchange, but I don't think there'll be a shovel turned on that interchange in 10 years. Sir?
Short-term fix on the 16 miles.
Yes, let's do that, please.
What about reducing speed limit? Has studies shown that reduces accidents too? Is that a possibility for a short-term fix?
So as Mary noted, the worst congested part of this piece is any lower speed limit. And I think that does help. I mean, certainly lower speeds at least mean less seriousness in crashes. What we need, though, is consistency in speed. When you have to raise speeds and go up and down in speeds, that's what causes concerns. So I think that the appropriate speed limit, whatever it may be, whether it's 55, 65, or 50 or whatever, is what we ought to do, and we need to try to maintain consistency through the corridor so you're not going up and down and people are just not used to what the speed is and generally get hit from behind.
Right. Mary, your data showed that, correct?
Yeah, it did. It showed that, there was the one stretch in the heart that had a little more curves and bends, and also where it crosses the river with the narrower bridge, that it did lower the speed limit. I'm also going to add that with speed limits, you can make them what you want to, but people are going to travel what speed they feel comfortable traveling on the road based on the way that it's designed. So you're probably getting some people naturally slowing down with some of the curves, but it's another whole other issue where if the curves are unexpected, that then they didn't realize that they needed to slow down. So I will say lowering speed limits will sometimes help, but it's kind of iffy sometimes, because if the road feels like it's open enough and an interstate you feel like you should be going 65 or 70 miles an hour, people are going to travel that no matter what you put the speed limit at.
Yeah, Mary does raise a really good point, because even when we set speed limits, it's based on a formula for how people would normally drive and where they feel comfortable. So artificially lowering the speed limit actually doesn't help. When there are issues like narrow bridges, like curvature that we have here, then it makes sense because people are likely to be slowing down anyway. But just to artificially lower a speed limit probably increases accidents.
Thank you.
Some of the other states, they have areas where you can't change lanes, especially going over bridges. I know Washington does this a lot. Is that something that in maybe some more areas where the blue strip was higher, that could be something implemented in a short period of time until a better solution is given?
So you're talking about not allowing them to change lanes. I didn't quite hear you.
Yeah, I think it was, you can't change the lane. Once you're in a certain lane, you stay in that lane.
Right, but you'd want to limit it for like 3 miles or 2 miles and then post that so people can prepare maybe where those areas are less congested, easier to change lanes, and then they have to stay in those lanes going through some of the areas.
Interesting option.
It is. A couple of other things I'd like to throw out, things that I've talked to on my morning show. What can we do in any of the four up here? Any ideas? What can we do short-term wise? We talked about speed limits. When I'm driving north, one of my best friends lived in Gurnee, and when you're approaching Gurnee, you have signs. You have flashing signs that look different. Dangerous area ahead because Great America's right there. We don't really have any of those along I-80. Can we do something similar to what is there? I was driving last weekend or 2 weeks ago to East Peoria to see my family for Christmas, and I literally about drove into the cornfield at mile marker 224, because going south, you have built I'm not knocking IDOT, just you have built a beautiful sign, but Dwight has very few people that live there. I don't even think R.R. Donnelly's open anymore. It might be, but a fraction of the people work there, so it can't be because of traffic. There's only 1 or 2 intermodal warehouses there, or warehouses. You built a sign going south at 224 and a sign coming north at 214. I'm guessing those are $1 million signs. Why would, when we don't have one along our stretch other than one at Cherry Hill Road, why would you build 2 out literally in the middle of nowhere? Again, I don't mean to be rude. It's just frustrating for me personally.
Yeah, they might argue whether they're in the middle of nowhere or not.
They are. They literally are. Trust me.
I'm not going there. Honestly, those were part of they were put in as a part of the reconstruction that we were doing on the bridge, so that we could give people advance warning on what was happening there. We have these overhead message signs in a number of places. We have them on I-55 and I-80. We don't have them directly in Joliet, and part of the reason is not that they're not necessary. We think that they are, but we want to do them as a part of the construction projects that we're building. You put the infrastructure in, and then you go in and do roadway work. You got to tear all that out.
Tear them out.
So our plan is, as we make those improvements, that the overhead message signs will be a part of the project itself.
All right. Well, with all due respect, I think I speak on behalf of all the residents around here. We don't want to wait for those. Is there anything we can do, Mr. Blankenhorn, in the next 3 months or 6 months, signage-wise? More consistent speed limit, no changing of lanes. Is there anything we can do? You have any ideas short-term where you can save maybe a life? Because you can't put a price tag on that.
You can't. And honestly, when you talk about a 3-month short term, Not to sound bad about our transportation projects, don't move that fast. Engineering takes time. We've got to make sure that we're not making safety worse by doing something. The truth is, too many signs is as much a hazard as not enough. So I think that what we've heard today are good ideas that we will take a look at, go back and work with our district staff and our engineers and say, let's not put everything in the 3 to 5 year category. What kinds of things might we be able to do in the next several months?
Okay. I know in 55, the bridges near ExxonMobil were being done. You guys drive to Springfield a lot, and that was a mess. You put up early warning signage all the way up toward Jefferson Street, even toward Caton Farm Road, telling people find another way or slow down right away. Those signs aren't $1 million signs. Those signs could be put up without probably a lot of engineering. Is there anything you can do to put up those type of permanent signs yet that could come down once you complete your engineering and start your reconstruction? Because those, as those of us that live in Shanahan, those are very effective, extremely effective.
Those are what we use there were actually portable signs that we can move around to various places. We use them generally with major construction projects. I think we can think about how we use them in a more progressive way, in a way that looks at what's happening. The problem is day to day,
right,
hour to hour. You don't want to put something saying congestion ahead when there isn't.
Right.
And so how do we make these work in a way that make the system work better? Scott, I think it's something we can look at.
Okay, and one other thing that I had, and this was something I thought was interesting. You all know when you go eastbound on Richards or eastbound on 80, you come up to Richards. How many people, you got 2 lanes and it's congested pretty much from 3 o'clock on until 7 o'clock eastbound. You've been through this. People fly up onto the Richards ramp and then boom, cut over through what is a painted median right there. Is there any way, and there probably isn't, but again, we're spitballing here tonight, people. Is there any way to put up some of those rubber pylons so people, once they're in that lane, they stay in that lane and can't cross over? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I can't answer that question. I don't know. But again, it's certainly something that we can look at. This is honestly not the time of year to be putting raised things on our highways.
Right, I understand.
We got snow we have to deal with. But outside of that, how can we use traffic control in a better way, I think is what you're suggesting. And I think there are potential options there.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, Bob.
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Joliet along with my family, and when my father was young and my 94-year-old aunt, the big industry was our steel mill, our E. Railroad. There were plentiful jobs, and people have made some remarks about the warehousing, but those are the jobs of today, and they've become competitive in salary. They're not $10, $9 jobs anymore. They're $17, $18, $19 jobs. And those are the jobs of today. If we looked at the recent reports that came from our news media, Will County is one of the fastest growing economies in the state of Illinois. It's because of Joliet. It's because of a lot of this warehousing. It's not going to go away. We don't have 500 jobs like my father had as a retired police officer. We had a good salary, or 500 radio jobs where you have a good salary, or others in this room, myself included. So this is not going to go away, and I can go into any neighborhood from here to where my daughter lives, out in Kendall County, city of Joliet, where you have warehouse workers that own homes. And that is the future, and soon will probably be the majority of residents in this area, the kind of jobs that they hold. So I give a lot of credit to our Will County elected officials, our city of Joliet elected officials, who have tried to bring economic development to the city. So we do need to address these issues on I-80. I know I've traveled it for years and I've never had a problem, but others have had a problem. But we do need to address it, but we also have to remember that these people that do work in warehouses are hard-working Americans that go to work each and every day for their families.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Would the Illinois State Police care to comment? Just anything? I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you don't, that's fine. What's it like pulling someone over on that road, and do you not even want to because of the danger?
Oh, I would absolutely say no.
Okay, good.
Yes, no. There's no. We're always concerned about our safety and making stops, but
There's nothing that's holding us back from enforcement on I-80.
Right.
One thing I would say is maybe a roadway safety assessment, working with state police and IDOT. We could complete that in a timely fashion, and that may assist us. But just talking tonight helps a whole lot, so.
Good.
Thanks for having us.
Do you have any safety ideas, short-term safety ideas that you've seen elsewhere, or you would be like, wow, that would be good if we had this?
More troopers help?
More troopers, absolutely. You're understaffed.
We are understaffed. We have classes going through now, but still, our staffing is going to take quite some time to catch up. So, does not fall on deaf ears. I'll put out everything about the 53 in Richards. Lane changes, if we can get more folks over there during rush hour, I'm sure that happens. So,
yeah, 53 Richards is very bad. Thank you for attending tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Any final questions? Any elected officials have anything that they'd like to bring up? Members of the media, if you'd like to stick around, I'm sure you can ask a couple of questions of our panel here. Thank you. I think this was positive. Hopefully you guys got a couple ideas. You know that we're motivated, and we'd love to have you back in a few months, hopefully with an update. I do understand you are coming to Joliet Junior College. Are you not, Randy, in a few weeks, or IDOT is?
I guess IDOT is. My calendar 3 weeks from now. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow.
Okay. Well, if listen to WJL, we'll let you know. Well, you're going to go home slow tonight, that's for sure. Want to thank the University of St. Francis Communication and Media Arts Department, Professor Rick Lawrence, Exploring Joliet Video Crew. These are the students here. Thank you very much. This was on. Thank you. This was on Facebook Live tonight on WJOL, so you can go back and watch it. Share it with as many people as possible. And this will also be on Monday through Friday, 7 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 a.m. on Joliet and Crest Hills Community Access channels. Mary, awesome report. It's going to be available tomorrow, right? It'll be out tomorrow morning, and we'll have a link to it on our website as well. Folks, share that with as many people as possible. It was an amazing piece of work that Mary did. Mary Craighead, Randy Blankenhorn, Kevin Artle, and Mark Paulus, thank you very much for coming. Rush will live on. Continue to support us, folks. Thank you.
I'm Exploring Joliet reporter Ashley Hare, and I am here with WJOL's very own Scott Slocum. So how did you organize the event tonight with Jim Murphy, and what motivated you to get this event planned?
Well, what motivated me was the number of accidents and fatalities we have on I-80. 37, now 38 after 2 weeks ago on I-80 in the last 15 years. The number of just regular accidents we have, fender benders, serious crashes, and of course fatal ones as well. There's no reason that we can't do something about that road. We've let it go for too long. We've ignored it because there's no money. So if it takes a grassroots organization like Rush to get things turned around, to get the conversation started, to get the ball rolling, all of those cliches, then we're more than willing to do it.
And what was your major goal to get out of this meeting tonight?
Major goal tonight was to show IDOT. I mean, I was the executive director of IDOT, and I was the COO of the Illinois Tollway. Mark Poulos is one of the most brilliant guys when it comes to traffic, and Mary Craighead from the Illinois Economic Policy Institute. These people they're rock stars, and we get them talking about it. Mary did a report just for this night, a report that would have cost tens of thousands of dollars. We wouldn't have been able to afford it as a grassroots organization. So to bring them together, to get them started, you saw the conversation and the interaction. That's huge. To have the elected officials realize that, you know, it's not okay just to say, IDOT says we can't do that. No, let's do something. Yeah, long term it's one thing, and there's a lot of problems and a lot of hurdles, but short term was my goal tonight. I want to see something done and something done within the next 6 months to make that road safer. I don't care if it's a sign, 3 signs, 10 signs, whatever. Something done that shows the residents of Will County, we care about you, and we're going to try to save lives.
And what do you think is the #1 biggest concern of the Will County residents with IDOT, Rush, and I-80 and 55?
Well, the #1 concern is money. It's going to be about $1.3 billion to fix this roadway. And if you think traffic's bad now, wait till they start trying to fix some of these roads. I don't know where people are going to go. So money's the big issue, but we need to move it along. We need a phase 1 engineering, which has already been done, phase 2, phase 3, but we need a source of money, and this is going to be a tollway, let's face it. IDOT doesn't have the money to do this. The feds won't give us the money. It's going to be a tollway. Let's get the tollway involved now, and let's start moving forward now, and let's not wait for 10 years, because You know, in 10 years, what, 25, 30 more people could die. That's unacceptable.
And what's your number one short-term goal that you would want to see maybe by the end of 2018?
Give us some signs. Give us, dangerous ahead. They have it for Great America, for crying out loud, up on 294. Why don't we have one? Dangerous curve ahead, dangerous area, flashing signs. They're not expensive. And you don't have to do a lot of engineering. They're breakaway signs. You can put them in right-of-ways. Something that will get people's attention, that will say, there's a dangerous area ahead. Because 63% of the people that use that road aren't from Will County. They're just using it as a portal to go from East Coast to West Coast or from Indiana to Iowa. So they're not aware of the dangerous conditions. We are. So let's get something up that says, straight ahead, there's something really nasty coming up, slow down.
Well, thank you for your time and organizing this event, and it was very successful, and we hope to see plans for the future of I-80 and 55.
Thanks for covering it. We appreciate it.
What will you take for college? Mom says teacher. Dad says accountant. Grandma thinks you do great as a nurse. What do you want to do? Why not a degree in communication and media arts from the University of St. Francis in Joliet? Writing, video, audio, graphic design, social media? You'll get the creative skills to help anybody tell their story and write your own success story in the process. Visit cmma.stfrancis.edu for more info.